Welcome back to Telltale Books. Continuing my series on Tom Godwin. I had always loved the Cold Equation since I read it way back in high school. But I never read anything else by Tom Godwin until I decided to dig into his work and do the series, mainly prompted by the fact that I had a book that had most of his short stories in, and he really didn't write all that much. And so this will be one of the shortest of my series that I do. But I started reading them, and I read The Gulf Between, and I read Mother of Invention, and I fell in love with both of those, gave those both top tail status, and those were his first and second. The Cold Equations is his fourth one that's coming up next. His third story is what I want to talk about in this video. It's called The Greater Thing. Now, The Greater Thing is a novelette published in Astounding Science Fiction by John Campbell in February of 1954. The basic plot here is kind of twofold. First of all, this takes place in a future after a world war has destroyed most of civilization. Civilization has been reassembled here in the United States, but under a dictatorship called the state. And there is an underground movement trying to topple the state and create a more democratic society again. And we follow these two characters that are with the underground. They're being chased by the police. Now, at the same time, during the war, something happened underground, under the city, and the action takes place in a city that's not really lived in anymore. It was destroyed in the war, so it's all empty and bombed out. But something happened where a thing was born. And somehow it amassed a great deal of knowledge, but it's underground, but it's conscious of what's going on above and can watch as people are doing things up above. And it takes an interest in these two people that are fleeing the police, and mostly it has never seen somebody die, so it wants to see somebody die. Okay, so you have on the one hand this framing story about this thing that has evolved and is learning and wants to learn about human beings. And on the other hand, you have this I found it really cool. Something I feel wasn't typical for magazine science fiction in 1954 or earlier. It was a really tense, suspenseful thriller. The story of these two people trying to evade the police, and they're being closed in on, and the things that happen. I don't want to ruin the story, but it is really, really well written, tense, thriller type story. It honestly would have made a great book on its own if it had been expanded into a whole novel of these people being pursued by the police and the adventures they're having trying to evade them or whatever. It could have been a really, really powerful novel. The writing and the writing style would have made it something where you're just on the edge of your seat reading it all the way through. Very, very well written, well crafted, at least that portion of the story. The other portion of the story about this thing that developed kind of frames, it kind of starts it and kind of ends it. And that part is interesting, it's imaginative, it's really cool, it's a cool idea. But in my opinion, even though this story is so well written otherwise, that device, I feel the story would have been stronger without it. I really do. I think that could have been left off, and you could have written this tense apocalyptic dystopian thriller and made it an incredible book. Yeah, and expanded it to a full novel and made this thing incredible, especially with the powers of writing that Tom Godwin clearly has here. Um, but by putting a bit about this thing on either end of the story, it kind of derails it, kind of slows it down, kind of makes it so it just doesn't flow quite right and doesn't hang together quite right, at least for me. And that's what keeps this from being a top tale. It's so close, but there's just something that's just not worked out here that isn't working for me. But I have to say it is another brilliant story by Tom Godwin, just not good enough to stand alongside his others. But definitely shows Tom Godwin as being a very powerful writer and writing stories that were in so many ways better than most of what was being written at this time. And I'm not just talking about stuff better than the stuff appearing in Planet Stories and Startling. I'm talking about better than stuff being written by Asimov or Clark or I won't say Dick, but Paul Anderson or writers like that were writing at this time. Tom Godwin is, in his first 4 stories, a much stronger, more professional writer. And it is a tragedy that he wrote so little, because he could have been so, he is a shining star here in my mind. I don't know how people felt about him at the time, and like I say, my whole life I only read the one story and never read anything else by him until now, and now I'm discovering him and thinking, wow, this guy is great. The Greater Thing is his weakest story so far, but that's, not weak by a whole lot. And very possibly just my personal opinion. So I recommend this. I really do. It's only a novelette, so it's not a huge investment in time. Unfortunately, it was published in Astounding Stories in February 1954. Otherwise, it has been anthologized, but not here in the United States. It's only been anthologized in the United Kingdom. It's appeared in a Penguin anthology edited by Brian Aldiss that was reprinted under a number of names over the years. And then most recently, it was published in the Folio Society Book of Science Fiction. That was published in 2016, which is no longer available from the Folio Society, but you can probably find a used copy. So the story, it's out there, but it's not in a Tom Godwin collection or anything. I really think with so few works, it would be really, really cool. And considering how strong all of these have been so far, I would really love to see a complete works of Tom Godwin published in a nice hardcover volume. Something like that. Complete short stories of J.G. Ballard that I have, or something better. So this guy really needs to have a lot more attention today, because his stories hold up and his writing is top notch. So check it out. Check out The Greater Thing and all the rest of the works of Tom Godwin. Have you read The Greater Thing? Leave comments. If you haven't, leave comments anyway. What the heck? And come on back and see more videos on more Tom Godwin, more J.G. Ballard, more of all these other authors I'm getting into. And Emily will come back from time to time. I'm reading so much stuff and doing cranking out so many videos, and Emily just doesn't have time to be involved with it all. So I'm doing it on my own, which I think has been good for me. Reading faster and really getting into it more, really thinking about it more. Anyway, Alex, hope you will join me for the next video.